Well, I was a massage therapist, and I just according to the victims, I touched things that I shouldn't have been touching.
If that wasn't enough, he went to the end of the table, rubbed my hair with oil, put his mouth over my face, and moaned. I was frozen. But guess what? I understand. He assaulted more people after me. There were over 40 victims that came forward.
Over 40 victims that came forward, and this happened 16 years or so before the Larry Nassar case. And if you can imagine, all they did was give this man probation. And now he's looking for a pardon for the second time. Now, this case, it unravels in ways that it will surprise, it will shock you. And I'll just leave it at that. I want you to experience this hearing the way that I did. It is totally mind-blowing. With that, let's jump in.
Joseph Burden, represented by Attorney Ruane.
Yes, good morning to the board. James Ruane on behalf of Mr. Burden, who is here and prepared to answer any questions that the board may have. I can supply to the board that we have no additional documents, nor has his arrest or conviction history changed since the filing of our application. In fact, his arrest or conviction history hasn't changed since this singular incident, which he has lived with for over 2 decades now. He has changed his life dramatically, and his application speaks for his desire to be able to end his years with a clean record. He has taken ownership. He has completed restitution to the victims as per his application, and he has successfully completed his time on the sex offender registry, which ended years ago. This is not his first application to the board. Another one was about a decade ago, at which time the board said that not enough time had passed. He has been caring for his aged mother over the last decade as well. And so I'll leave it to him to answer any questions that the board may have about his application.
Thank you, Attorney Ruane. Happy New Year.
Sir, can you please state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Joseph Burden.
Thank you, sir. And at this time, you may explain to the board why you believe you're suitable for an absolute pardon.
Okay. I would like to thank the board for granting me this hearing today. I'm seeking a pardon from the board because of a horrible mistake I made in my life 24 years ago. A mistake that I am deeply sorry for and has troubled me all these years. I've always wished that I could go back and change things, but I can't do that. I wish that I could have told the victims how sorry I am for what happened, but I couldn't do that either because I never had any contact with them. But I would like them to know that I am very sorry. I've always spoken to God in my prayers and told him how sorry I am and asked him for forgiveness. I'm not a bad person. I'm not an evil person. I'm just a quiet, kind, compassionate, respectful person to everyone I meet. I've always lived my life that way, and I've had even more so the past 24 years. For the past 20 years, I've been working in manufacturing, and I am now currently retired. I spend the majority of my time as a caregiver for my mother, who's 94 years old, and she's an invalid. And together, my brother and I do the best we can to see to her comfort and needs, as she took care of me in my time of need. When I had no place to live, she took me in until I currently moved to where I am today. And it was exactly 20 years ago that I met my girlfriend, Louisa, and we've been together for 20 years now. She stuck by my side through all my troubles and my darkest days after I completed my probation. She's retired as well. Together we have struggled, and I'm hoping that after having a clean criminal record, we could get married, find a place to live together in peace and happiness without the stress and anguish that has plagued me all these years. Once again, I want you to know how sorry I am for my actions, and I take full responsibility. I thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Burden. I would like you to answer, what do you think the impact that your actions have had on your victims?
I don't know what the impact was. I'm hoping and praying that they were doing well and successful in all their endeavors.
Do you think that there were any long or residual effects to them because of what you were, I mean, honestly, in your application, you spoke so much about how you were so reputable and I understand that you are remorseful, but I would, based on the time that has elapsed and um, the number of victims that you've had, because you didn't just do this one time, you did it numerous times. And I just was interested in hearing what you thought the impact I mean, if you're massaging me and some of the things that you did, I would be mortified. So I'm interested again in knowing what you think the impact that your actions have had on your victims.
I, I'm sorry if for any pain that I've caused anybody. I never meant to harm anyone.
I understand that. Okay. I appreciate that. That's the only question that I had for you. I mean, I'm glad that you are remorseful and I'm glad you've had an opportunity to apologize to the victims here today. We do have input from the victims, but I'm going to see if my colleagues have any questions for you prior to that. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, Mr. Byrne, I just wanted, I know you're remorseful and you've said you've taken responsibility. I just want to be clear about what you've taken responsibility for, because I know that in reading your documentation, in many ways, you minimized some of the events that occurred. So what exactly are you taking responsibility for, so I can understand that a little bit better?
Well, I was a massage therapist, and I just according to the victims, I touched things that I shouldn't have been touching.
Well, I know according to the video, but I want to know what your feeling is. Are you acknowledging that's exactly what occurred, and not you're apologizing for that, or are you
I'm
still?
apologizing for anything that I did to anybody, that if I touched anybody inappropriately, and I'm sorry for any pain.
I'm still kind of getting the sense that on some level you're still minimizing your responsibility in this, and I just want to be clear about it, because I think it's kind of an important thing, not just for you but for the victims to be able to hear and understand. And it's especially since we're going to be hearing from, I don't know how many of the victims, but we're going to be hearing from somebody. I want to be clear about what exactly you're accepting responsibility for. And again, I hear you saying you're sorry. So are you saying, yes, you did this and you're really sorry about this, and you want to move on? And I get that.
I'm sorry for touching anybody inappropriately.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. All right. Thank you so much for that. All right. I have no other questions for Mr. Burden.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Ms. Palmieri?
So I have two questions. So Mr. Burden, when I reviewed your file, I noted that you did do treatment.
Yes.
You did a form of sex offender treatment. You did it in New York. Why did you choose to go out of the state and do it at a separate provider?
I had no place to live, and my mother asked me to come live with her, and my mother and father lived in the Bronx.
I understand. Thank you.
I had to move I had to move.
Okay. So, and tell me, do you feel like you benefited from that treatment?
Yes, I did.
And how do you feel that you benefited?
Well, I after dealing with that treatment, I had a better understanding of the things that I did wrong, and I would never ever do anything like that again.
Okay. And so you were denied an application for a pardon over 10 years ago. It's about 11 years ago now, 2014. What has changed for you since that time?
Well, since 2014, I was laid off from a job, and then I couldn't find employment anywhere. And my girlfriend and I lost our house, and so I applied for a pardon because I wanted to get rid of the criminal record. And ever since then, I've just been doing whatever I could for her and I to live a happy life together. I
Do you feel after having been denied that pardon, and it was because of the charges and the seriousness of them, and not having been at the hearing, I would also gather, there was a feeling of minimization even back then. Did you sit back and reflect on what the situation was and why you believe? Did you have an understanding of why you were denied the pardon?
I only received a letter in the mail telling me that I was denied. I never had a hearing.
Okay, so you were denied at pre-screen. I
Yes.
understand. Okay. All right. And what do you think you've done between now and then to make yourself a better candidate for a pardon today? I mean, you've waited over 10 years, so you must have done something.
Well, all I've been doing is working, and my father passed away a few years ago and left my mother, and I've been taking care of her.
Mhm.
And that's all I've been doing. And I just retired, and the only things I've been doing is working and taking care of my parents.
Okay. All right. I appreciate your answering my questions. Thank you, Mr. Burden. I have no further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Palmieri. So as stated, we do have input from the victim. We're going to turn the hearing over to Mr. Jesus, our victim's advocate. Good morning, Mr. Jesus.
Good morning, board members. I do have the victim via Zoom. This is your opportunity to express to the board your wishes and your concerns. I am to remind you that you were to address the panel members only, and you may begin.
Sorry. Good morning. I'm Jane Doe. I'm also Piper Paul. I'm an attorney. I'm a former prosecutor. I was in homicide investigations and prosecuted some sex crimes. The last thing I thought would ever happen would I would be a victim of a sex crime. And what I really didn't think was that I was going to freeze. How I would feel perilous. On February 20th, I showed up. And he assaulted me over and over and over again. I was vulnerable. I was naked. I was laying there. He pulled my legs off the table. He pushed his hands into my vagina. He groped my breasts. He took his erect penis and put my hand and pushed his breasts into me. He held my hand on his, not with one hand, but with two hands. If that wasn't enough, he went to the end of the table, rubbed my hair with oil, put his mouth over my face, and moaned sexually. I was frozen. But guess what? I understand. He assaulted more people after me. There were over 40 victims that came forward. There were, I don't know how many arrests, about 10. My understanding is I don't know that he did the treatment. I don't know that he understands the PTSD. I had young children. I lost myself. I lost years of my life. Flashbacks, couldn't go places. I couldn't be touched. I am not the only victim of him. I know there are over 40 others. He has chosen positions and jobs that he can assault people. A personal trainer going into homes, a massage therapist going into homes, a rental agent. My understanding is even after this occurred, he continued to practice massage therapy at times. And I don't know about personal training. I want to bring something to your attention. It is called Between the Sheets. It is written by Mr. Burden. This is his book. I don't know how he's doing this. It's on Amazon. It is a fictitious book. Ironically, several of the victims are in this book, and I am one of them. The initials are the same. This was written after he was denied pardon. You ask what he was doing? He was writing a book. This is from 2017. This book I recognized myself in this book under my initials. The facts were wrong, but some were correct. I question whether he understands what he has done and why he wrote such a book. I do not know how people who have convicted crimes can write books and profit. And to make this even worse, he gave a 5-star rating on Amazon from himself. How do I know this is him? 1, his picture. 2, the name is Alexander Tovolacci. Alexander's his father's middle name. Tovolacci is his mother's maiden name. Mr. Burden was busy after his denial. I do not think, I am terrified that he is going to re-offend. And that is why I'm here today. I absolutely do not think he should be granted a pardon, because he would have the opportunity to go back into these homes and assault more victims. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members. That's all I have.
Thank you. I think that we all have a very similar concerns with Mr. Burden's application. I think that given the information that we have just heard and a review of his file, to be quite frank, was very concerning to me. So I have to be honest in that I am not going to support a pardon today. I will list my reasons. Ms. Palmieri, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would not be in favor of supporting a pardon either. I think that truly that the testimony from the victim is incredibly powerful.
It really is.
And I do understand that Mr. Burden is trying to get on with his life, but he is off the registry, he is retired. And I do have similar concerns that without the convictions being in place, that there's an opportunity for him to get back into a similar occupation that he was doing when he committed the offenses, if they're not still on his record.
Agreed. Mr. Rodriguez?
Madam Chair, yeah, I have my concerns early on too, because I still felt that although he was remorseful, and I don't know if it was more because he really got in trouble and really got caught in all of this and caught up in all of this, but I still had a sense of him minimizing some of his responsibility.
I know he absolutely did.
And then of course the victim statement was very, very powerful. So I would also not be inclined to be granting his pardon today.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. With regard to Joseph Stanley Burden, I move that his request for absolute pardon be denied for reason 6, the injury and impact to your victim and or the victim's family, and 12, the seriousness of your offenses would be diminished by the expungement of your criminal history. Mr. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Ms. Palmieri?
Aye.
My vote is aye. Your pardon is denied, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Ruane.
Can you even imagine? He writes a book about it. Between the sheets. What a sicko. He actually writes a book about it and he sells it on Amazon. The fictional story of Daniel Baxter, a successful massage therapist who is employed at a high-class day spa and is accused of sexually assaulting female clients. He is arrested. His attorney encourages him to plead no contest to a lesser charge. He is placed on probation. Probation. He is placed on probation. He doesn't serve 1 day in jail. Let me remind you, this case took place in the year 2000. This took place 17 years before Larry Nassar was prosecuted and given how many hundreds of years sentence? What a difference. some time makes, huh? Isn't that insane? Now, when one gets locked away forever and the whole world knows about it, the other gets to write a book and sell it on Amazon, literally talking about his crimes almost per word. You can't make it up. And to hear this, to hear it come from a former prosecutor of homicides, a special victim unit for sexual offenses, to hear her talk about it, I hope that this can bring some, we cover so many parole hearings. And many parole hearings, there are some that stick out. And there are those, there was one in Utah, I think it was called it was when the Mama Bear parole board member really gave it into the guy. This guy essayed a woman in a bar in the bathroom. And I saw comments in the comment section there, and people were like, it was a full bar. She was in the bathroom. Why didn't she yell? And they're victim blaming. And she, like the ADA said, she froze. She literally froze. And one doesn't know how they will act when they're under that situation. Some people fight, some people flight, and some people freeze. And I hope that this can make any people who ask that question realize that this is coming from an ADA. This is coming from someone who is accustomed to standing up and locking away the worst of the worst. And oh man, they're talking about who's it in the parole board? Rodriguez that said, I thought I saw remorse. What remorse? The guy's like, and this is it. He's faking it. His face. He's putting on this whole act. If anyone wants to see psychopathy, there you have it. Anyone wants to see how they can act up and be manipulative, we just saw it firsthand. He literally writes a book and sells it on Amazon where he illustrates his fantasies, his crimes, and puts himself as the victim. But it really does get worse if you didn't think that's possible. Forget not only that he got probation for doing this, but he goes to New York. He applies as a real estate agent. A judge says, no, you can't do that. He files an appeal and he wins the appeal. He wins the appeal because New York has more lenient charges than Connecticut. And they say, actually, the victims in his case said that they were frozen in fear, but our description, the way that we analyze it is quite different. But because they weren't intoxicated or whatever, that he could be a lower level on the sex offender. Let me read this to you. Thank you, Sir Richard. A Bronx judge has effectively, and look, this is written just in 2018. A Bronx judge has effectively barred a convicted sex offender from getting a new lease on life as a real estate salesman. The judge said the man, a former masseur convicted in Connecticut of SA fondling several female clients at a posh spa, would have solitary access to women as a real estate agent. Joseph, who is 46, who recently moved to the Bronx, had pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor charge of SAing several female clients from September 2000 to March 2001. 3 customers said Burden touched them inappropriately during massage and manipulated them into touching him. They said they were afraid and felt paralyzed during the attacks. As a result of his plea, Burden had to undergo counseling, turn in his Connecticut and New York massage therapy licenses, and get all employment pre-approved by a probation officer. He had sought to go to court to get sex offender status reduced in New York State because his Connecticut misdemeanor conviction is the New York equivalent to felony conviction, which would bar him from getting a real estate license. Although the defendant began participating in counseling upon his transfer to the Bronx County, there is still no evidence that he has accepted responsibility for his actions, Bronx State Supreme Court Justice said. This is what the Supreme Court Justice said. Give that Supreme Court Justice credit in 2018. Of course, he didn't accept responsibility. He literally written a book. The judge said Burden refused to even discuss the case, let alone take responsibility. And this board, I bet you they would have granted. I have little doubt from the cases that we've seen and the grants that they gave on a daily basis, if this ADA did not stand up. But don't worry, he won on appeal. But he won on appeal in the state of New York. Is this here where it is? Yep, there it is. So here, where he wins on appeal, he says, therefore, hearing court erred in finding that the physically helpless for purpose of determine what New York offenses was the equivalent of the Connecticut convictions, and correspondingly erred in determining that the equivalent New York offense was first degree rather than third degree SA. Accordingly, sex offender adjudication must be vacated. And what they mean by that is they consider that being frozen just froze, and in the other words, was afraid to confront him that this is not the same as being physiologically incapable of speech, drugged into a stupor, or otherwise unable to communicate or unwillingness to submit. So they're saying it's quite different, and that's why they vacated it. So he was allowed to get his New York State license. So good to know that New York is actually less strict than Connecticut. It's kind of like in Utah, where if you, in Utah, we spoke about this with our CPS investigator. If someone commits assault of a sexual nature above someone's clothing, or their finger doesn't go inside of the person, that is a misdemeanor charge. It has to actually penetrate to be a felony. And that makes a lot of sense. Good job for the legislators protecting our roaches. Really, that's so great of them to take such care in protecting people who would do that. So here, let's go over the facts of the crime for those of you who still, want some clarity. Factual setting. Following conviction after the entry of nolo contendere, no contest, in the Superior Court of Connecticut for 2 counts of SA in the 4th degree and 1 count of breach of peace, the defendant was required to register as a sex offender since the relocation to the Bronx is now a supervision department. Okay. On September 14th, 2000, a 32-year-old female complained that she was a victim of SA. According to the victim, she was at the Derma Clinic in West Point, September 13, 2000, where she received a massage from Joseph, who she had received massage from in the past. She began lying on her stomach, and upon turning her back, he began to touch her left inner thigh. Joseph's hand came very close to her crotch. Joseph then moved to her right leg and once again massaged her inner thigh, but this time he stuck his fingers under the victim's underwear and began to rub her. He then inserted his fingers into her. The victim stated that she felt him insert his fingers into her a couple of times. Joseph then walked around to the table and brushed his erect against the bottom of the victim's foot, at which time he stated that he was pitching a tent. The victim stated as she felt paralyzed during the incident that she just froze. Now the next victim. On February 20th, 2001, a 35-year-old female complained that she had been SA'd while receiving a massage at the clinic. According to the victim, a man named Joseph conducted the massage as it began by her lying on her stomach. She then turned onto her back at the time Joseph massaging her leg, pulling her leg off the table. The victim then felt Joseph's hand touch her. Joseph began to massage the other leg, once again touching her where he shouldn't be touching her. Joseph then began to massage her arm. He then placed the palm of the victim's hand at his crotch, which at that time felt that he was pitching a tent. He did this with both hands at one time. So this is who we heard from. 35-year-old prosecutor at the time. She indicated she was afraid to confront a prosecutor in that field. And again, it's just, I hope that and to think Larry Nassar gets hundreds of years and this guy gets probation. On March 8th, 2001, a 43-year-old female, and I get that there are differences, but remember, they're bringing 3 cases, and the prosecutor stated that she was aware of 40 victims. On March 8th, 2001, a 43-year-old female complained that she was SA'd while receiving a massage in West Point CT. According to the victim, she received a massage from Joseph, and he kept manipulating her hands in contact. I think we get the point. I'll put this in the link in the description. But, and then they go through, this is what's just so ridiculous. I don't even want to, but they go through the scoring system. On May 24, 2004, the board submitted a risk assessment that even though he only assessed a score of 60, and I don't know what kind of assessment risk score this is, it's not what we're accustomed to, the board recommended classifying the defendant as a risk level 2 based on upward departure. Specifically, the board assessed 10 points for sexual contact underclothing, 30 points for being 3 or more victims, and 20 points for his relationship with the victim being both professional and established for purpose of victimizing. It is noted that no points were assessed for the defendant not accepting responsibility or having inappropriate employment situation. Each of those factors would add 10 points to the defendant assessed score, creating an aggregate score of 80, placing him at a risk level 2. We all know that these risk things are nuts, and it's a different discussion for a different day. But there you have it. I thought that it was such a powerful impact statement, one that I hope can help others who've seen it. Thank you, Sir Richard, for on a dime jumping in to do this research and pull this all together, because I had to run and do carpool and I wanted to get this in for tonight. So thank you very much. And with that, we'll jump to the next.
Yes,
Good
Russell
morning,
Dion here.
sir. Can you please state your name for the record?
Russell Dion.
Thank you. And at this time, you may explain to the board why you believe you're suitable for an absolute pardon.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present my request for an absolute pardon. I deeply regret the harm my actions caused and offer my sincerest apologies to the victim and her family. There is no justification for what I did, and I take full responsibility. To begin, I was 18 years old at the time I committed this terrible offense. Thankfully, the state of Connecticut intervened in my life when I was unable to help myself, remanding me to a prison a month after my 20th birthday. It was there that I attended my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting, drawn in by the understanding that there would be free donuts. The message of hope and recovery from active addiction resonated with me, and that meeting changed my life. I've been clean and sober for 35 years and remain good friends with 2 of the men who brought meetings into the prison. I'm forever grateful for their support. 2 pivotal experiences saved my life: prison and Narcotics Anonymous. I'm deeply grateful for both. Remaining clean has enabled me to build a stable, loving family. My wife and I recently celebrated 25 years of marriage, and we've raised our sons in a home free from the chaos of addiction. Being in recovery has also allowed me to make amends to both of my parents before their passing, as well as to my brother. Sorry. Who passed away as a result of active addiction. Just couldn't help him. These experiences have brought me peace and closure. I'd like to briefly share just a few ways that a pardon would impact my life. A pardon would allow me to fully support my sons in their military careers. Currently, I cannot enter military installations due to my conviction. A pardon will eliminate barriers in my cybersecurity career, especially with international travel. My parent company is based outside the United States, and a pardon would open up new opportunities to remove travel restrictions. A pardon would provide peace of mind regarding my future as I age, ensuring no restrictions on long-term care options for skilled nursing facilities. A pardon would enable me to give back by returning to prisons as part of a hospitals and institutions commitment, sharing my journey in recovery and hope. In closing, I want to reiterate my profound remorse for the pain my actions caused. To the victim, I am truly, deeply sorry for the harm I inflicted upon you. No words can undo the damage I caused, but please know that I carry the weight of that regret every day. You did nothing to deserve what happened, and I hope with all my heart that you have been able to find some healing over time. I am deeply sorry for what I put you through. As I remain committed to my personal growth and making meaningful contributions to society, I want to sincerely thank the members of this panel for considering my request for a pardon today. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Dion. My sincere condolences for the loss of your brother. Unfortunately, your story is all too familiar in terms of that addiction. So I'm glad that you were able to overcome that hurdle. Mr. Rodriguez, you have questions for Mr. Dion.
Well, for Mr. Dion, it seems like you've, trying to put your life together. It's 35 years since your last incident. That incident was very serious. And it seems like you've, been involved in a stable relationship for all these years. You've moved on to get a very good work, a very good job. It seems like, you're happy with the kind of work that you do. You've gotten some positive reports about your treatment, which I've acknowledged as well. You've seems like things are moving in a very positive direction for you. I'm also very sorry for your loss as well. I know it's very difficult to handle someone so close to you, losing someone so close to you, and trying the best that you can to try to make their lives a little bit better, and not working out. At this point, I don't have a lot of questions. You were not granted a pardon back in, I think, 2020. What's changed since that point for you?
So for me, I think I've always been remorseful and sorry for what I've done. I've actually been denied a pardon twice, and I think that was my failure in.
I have that down. You're right, 2 times.
Yeah, it was my failure as far as being able to express my remorse and show you, the panel, that I take full responsibility for what I've done. So what I've, as we've learned in the 12 steps, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So the thing I've learned is, I've reached out and asked for help. So I've had help, being able to express to this panel, that I am a different person. I've worked tirelessly and very hard, going to many programs, starting from when I was within the prison, anger management, sexual assault treatments, and even after, when I got out of prison, I went to some programs for sexual assault treatment. But I've been a constant member of Narcotics Anonymous from the day I got out of prison.
I think those are very positive things that you're doing. But what I want to kind of get a bit more clear is, you said you had remorse and accepted responsibility. What changed that you feel like now is really the time that you've really, fully feel remorseful and responsible? I mean, I'm trying to understand that. If you accepted responsibility before, what's the difference today?
Today is
You're
just
acknowledging that, in fact, everything
I'm
happened the way it
acknowledging
happened.
whatever I've done, like, I take full responsibility. There's no justification for what I did. And
Okay.
I can't express enough how bad I feel and how
Well, how do you think
remorseful I am.
how do you think it's impacted the victim?
I'm very sorry. I'm hoping, like, she was able to find some healing throughout these many years. I wish her only the best. And again, I am totally wrong in what I did. There's no justification. I'm very sorry. I wish her only the best.
Okay, again, I'm sorry for your loss again, and thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Palmieri.
Well, I have no questions. I think there was a lot of information in the file. I went back to also look at some of the other applications for the pardon, and there have been more changes, more things that Mr. Dion has been involved with in the community. And there's been some things that have stayed constant, and that is his commitment to his family and sobriety. So I don't have any other questions based on what I've read in the file. There was also an updated evaluation
Correct.
speaking to the low risk.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Palmieri. It's my understanding that we have state's attorney input.
Yes, thank you. Jacqueline Prevail, Supervisory Assistant State's Attorney for the Judicial District of Tolland. I've had an opportunity to review the old case file regarding this matter, as well as Mr. Dion's application for pardon. And I'm here today to object to the granting of the pardon, for several reasons. First, as I'm sure everyone can agree, sexual assault in the first degree is one of the most serious offenses in our statutes. And quite frankly, has only been handled more seriously since the offense occurred and Mr. Dion was convicted in 1989. The mandatory minimums have increased, the periods of probation that are required have increased, and his original sentence on this matter is reflective of the severity of the offense for which Mr. Dion entered his guilty pleas. He received a sentence of 15 years suspended after 8 years to serve, 1 year of which is mandatory minimum, and 3 years probation on sexual assault in the first degree and unlawful restraint in the first degree. The underlying facts underlying facts of the case were so violent and concerning on a essentially random person, I think weighs heavily in favor of not granting a pardon in this matter. Essentially, Mr. Dion met the victim that night, was going to drive her to a party from East Hartford. They ended up in Hebron, where they ended up in an isolated residential road that was wooded. Mr. Dion solicited sexual contact from the victim. She said no, got out of the car. He left, came back, again, tried to have sexual contact with her. She said no again, and he forcibly sexually assaulted her in the woods and then left her. She had to go to a home in the area to seek help, and she was extremely traumatized by that. In her statement in the pre-sentence investigation that was used at the sentencing, she indicated she was treated at the emergency room. She was in a hysterical condition, suffering bruising and discomfort on her body. She was prescribed tranquilizers for weeks after the offense and had to seek rape crisis counseling. Her drinking increased because she claimed it helped her to forget. She was experiencing nightmares and would not leave her home without a companion. Her family members corroborated that at sentencing, and it appears as though in my file she was so traumatized it does not appear as though she could go to that sentencing. Notes from the prosecutor at the time said that she was probably not going to be there and was aware of the recommendation. He is required to be a lifetime sex offender due to the forcible sexual assault in the first degree conviction. And that is also important. That was something that he had pled guilty to, and there is a public interest in having those types of convictions stand while being on the sex offender registry. In my review of Mr. Dion's application for the pardon, in what is somewhat concerning to the state, in several different parts of that application, Mr. Dion indicates that not wanting to essentially be on the sex offender registry and not be a convicted sex offender is at least part of what's motivating this application for a complete pardon, which the state would argue there is a public interest and statutory interest in having these convictions stand, and that although it is a collateral consequence of the offense that he is a convicted sex offender and on the registry, that is something that based on the severity of the offense is required. That in looking at his application, it's clear that he has had no criminal interactions with the criminal justice system since then, and that's to be commended. However, based on the serious nature of this offense, there is no extraordinary reason in the state's view that would support the granting of the pardon, and that outweighs the severity of this offense in upholding this conviction. I think that the reasons listed why the pardon was denied previously in 2013 and 2020 are correct and are relevant to this application and should be applied, namely the impact on the victim, the seriousness of the offense would be diminished, the lifetime registration requirement for a sexual assault in the first degree, and the serious nature of the offense is evidenced by the term of incarceration. It's just the state's position that this is just too serious to warrant a full and absolute pardon in these particular matters.
Thank you. Okay. Let's talk about Mr. Dion's file. While I appreciate the comments that was made by our state's attorney, and I agree, the nature of this offense is extremely concerning. Mr. Dion has made tremendous and put forth tremendous efforts to turn his life around, and by maintaining his sobriety, it's my understanding that drugs and alcohol played a role in these behaviors. He's been working diligently to try to get back in his community. And if I were on the sex offender registry, I'd want to get off too, I'm just saying. But I wouldn't be in this position because I just, nonetheless, I'm not trying to pass judgment. I'm simply saying that it's understandable after having been on the registry for so long to want a little bit of freedom. I do not see any kind of behaviors to suggest that this is problematic or will be problematic in the future for him. We have an evaluation in our file speaking to his current risk rate. And he had that evaluation done to support that his sexual deviant behaviors have been addressed. He's completed the treatment. He was incarcerated for a long period of time. And he completed supervision years ago, 1997, I show. So I really do not see any reason why Mr. Dion, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, should not be granted a pardon. That's just my position. Ms. Palmieri.
So, Madam Chair, I agree with your position. I appreciate all the comments by the state's attorney. And, in reviewing the file, we do look at the charge and recognize that it is one of the most serious charges that we could probably see. And with that said, at that time, Mr. Dion was a very young man, and he was using substances at the time. Incarceration, he was incarcerated for those crimes. He has been out in the community for 3 decades, 31 years, has had no difficulties, as been stated. He has strong support in the community. There were a number of letters written in support of his pardon today. I do think that I appreciate that the registry is a part of the conviction and is a collateral consequence of it. However, in my view, I do see that Mr. Dion has lived up to his responsibilities of being on the registry, has upheld all the requirements of it, and accepted the limitations with employment and volunteering that it has presented, and has done his best. And from what I was reading, to not put himself where he feels that other people would feel at risk by his behavior. So I do think that also is a indicator of his rehabilitation and his understanding of the offense, how it presents to the community. But with all that said, I do think that he has done much to make himself acceptable for a pardon today, and I would be in favor of it.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I mean, there's not much left for me to say. I mean, I think both of you have kind of gone over the areas that I would have discussed as well, and shared as my reasons for wanting to support his granting of his pardon today. And I said earlier when you first called on me that this offense was a very serious offense. We both, I think, we recognize that and understand that, and I appreciate the state attorney's statement today. But I also believe that Mr. Dion has really put in the work to try to improve his life. And we're talking about 35 years of no other incidences of anything. So I would be supporting his pardon today.
Thank you. I move that Russell Dion be granted a full and absolute pardon. Ms. Palmieri?
Aye.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Vote is aye, the pardon is granted. Thank you, State's Attorney.
You know, isn't it fascinating that we have a former state's attorney show up and leave a victim impact statement, and then we have a state's attorney show up and talk about this crime, and that is very, very rare for Connecticut. Parole hearings, we almost never see it, and pardon hearings, I think this might be a first. If it's not a first, I can't recall. And I'm just like, who are you? Please show up more. People are watching. We would love to see you more. Sit there and lay down the facts. It's important. Thank you for doing it. You did a good job. This board, though, there's something else. It's interesting. I don't have any facts on the crime, but the idea that he was denied twice for not showing remorse, it does say something. We see how easily they hand out pardon hearings. Remember, when they deny, they state why. And it wasn't that, the both times they stated that he didn't show remorse. And it only makes me wonder if it was one of those lizard hearings where there was no remorse. And now finally he figured out how to try to do it. He did. I thought that I saw emotion. There were some red flags in seeing it. I'm very, to quote him, one of the things he said, I'm very sorry and hoping she could find some healing for what I did. I wish her the best. I don't know. It didn't sound like he was like, maybe I have to go back and listen to that. Yeah, that's what I just listened to it again. He said, I'm very sorry. I'm hoping she was able to find some healing. I wish her only the best. I was wrong. I wish her only the best. And again, I read between the lines there, along with the fact that he was denied twice for not feeling remorse, that he still, in some sense, blames her. That's where I'm reading between the lines. Anyways, I'll have to ask you, how do you feel about it? For a crime that he committed in 1990, 30 years later, 35 years later, should he get off of the registry with no other crimes? It's remember, this is a pardon hearing. This isn't about getting parole. This isn't about you're locked up for 30 years in prison and should you release or not. This is about removing you from the sex registry for a first-degree assault. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Again, I think it was quite unique to see two state attorneys, one former victim, survivor, and then one here standing up for the victim, survivor. One denial and one grant. With that, I'll let you go.
But I wouldn't be in this position because I just, nonetheless, that's not